through humanity on the level of human beings, and that the power of this deity is centered in the heart of every creature that has the physical structure to have this occur. And in other forms of life, this deity is present very often in the magnetic field because there is not enough organization for it to enter in and dominate. But everything in the world is dominated by this divine being. It is the power of life in us. Without it, we cannot breathe, and without using it, we cannot live correctly. It is this problem of getting at what life wants of us instead of the eternal cry of what do we want from life. Our wants are limitless, but the wants of life itself are few. And the most important want or desire of life is to express its own purpose. And its own purpose is the highest purpose that any human being can conceive of. So we have the right to gradually work toward the recognition of a purposeful background for ourselves. We are here to prove that we are growing. We are not here to make all the mistakes we made over a period of 100,000 years. We are not here because we died on the battlefield of Troy. We are not here because we fought the great war of the Mahabharata. We are here because it is assumed that from previous lives we have learned something, and therefore are capable of living above the level of previous existences. Yet in our general appearance as we go along through, it does not seem that humanity has learned this. It does not seem that we are really aware that it is not foreordained and predestined that we make the same mistakes we always made. In a sense, to make a mistake is a rare individual privilege that we can't afford. But actually, we keep on making the mistakes. And why? Well, look into ourselves. I know a great many people who are quite nominally religious. They believe in religion. They believe in God. They worship their various saints and sages with real devotion. But when temptation comes along, they fall. The one told me once that God would have to overlook a few of these idiosyncrasies. It might be that if God sat on a throne in the heavens, he wouldn't notice some of them. But unfortunately, God is inside of us. It is a divine principle that knows everything about us, while we know nothing about it. So there is no avoiding. The damage is done to the psychic integration. The damage is done to the development of internal character. The compromises that we make are scar tissue in our soul fabric. There is no possible way of avoiding it. So it is up to the person not only to be a nominal believer in something, or to accept the idea that he should do better than he does. The great problem is that he must do better than he does, or else he will remain as he is. If he remains as he is, he will be worried to death over every political crisis that arises in international affairs. If he remains as he is, he will worry about high taxes, and he will worry about inflation and depression. If he continues as he is, he will have great anxieties about nuclear fission. He will recognize only the deficiencies in our various energy resources. He will live in an emergency until the emergency closes over him and actually destroys his body by exhaustion. If he continues as he is, he will continue to have exactly the same anxieties. Yet, if you look around a little, and I've done a little looking, you will find there are a great many people today who do not have these anxieties. Now, there are two kinds of people involved. One is the childlike person who has not yet accepted the reality of the illusion. And the other is the very wise person who has outgrown the error of illusion. These two, one through innocence and the other through virtue, have attained liberation. The small child doesn't know enough to worry. The older, wiser person has recognized the operation of a universal principle, has accepted it, and is trying to live in harmony with it, fully aware that nothing that is real can ever be destroyed, and that nothing that is unreal can ever be preserved. In the ecology around us in life, we perceive definitely how human abuse is gradually exhausting natural resource. We know that as long as the abuse continues, the resource will become more scarce. But this is actually part of the growing process. To discover these things, to accept them, to know they are true, and to live according to them is what we are here to accomplish. And the more that we accomplish in this way, the more we adjust to a larger vision of life. In a comparatively short time, we will depart from this uncertainty, and for a time at least, be no longer directly associated with the causes of our anxieties. But if we haven't solved them, we will be born again as people with anxieties. We might live in a completely utopian sphere at that time and be just as miserable as we are now. The individual who is miserable today will remain miserable until he solves the mystery of misery within himself, until he is able to build an acceptance of the plan of things and cooperate with it. If in the course of this life we do accomplish something that is really good, it may manifest a little bit right here now. And people who have at the moment very little incentive will find new objectives and new reasons for existence. We'll find that life is something more than trying to endure the passing of years with the full realization they're going to end one of these days. This is not life. This is not purpose. The individual who wastes time so it'll pass more quickly doesn't realize it, but he lives in a universe in which there is enough time for him to continue to make this mistake as long as he wishes to. But he will not win. In the long run, nature achieves. Because nature has put into every cell the secret of its own salvation. It has put into the individual every faculty and power necessary for him to achieve liberation from the delusions and illusions of an unreasonable life. He is here essentially surrounded by a series of social disciplines also. And if he is unable to learn directly from his own inner core, he is perhaps able to learn through the experience of his own conduct. This is one way in which we understand nature. We know what nature wants largely by discovering what it does not want and learning from experience. But experience is always with us in the physical world. We are surrounded by problem after problem, and there are many clinical answers to many of these problems. If you go to a qualified psychologist or psychiatrist with a heap of worries, he will probably very quickly remark or bring to light the fact that you are suffering from a wrong mental attitude. And if later this wrong mental attitude begins to interfere with the function of the body itself, your physician, realizing that your mind is wrecking your body, will send you back to some psychologist and tell him to clear it up. The individual, however, with all this complex and quite a little expense thrown in as a special inducement, because there's nothing at the present time, apparently, that comes closer to sincerity than the loss of money. The individual could learn very simply. He looks at himself and he finds out that he's been nursing all kinds of destructive attitudes until finally he is sick. And if he nurses them long enough, he will be sick. And if he does nothing about it after he gets sick, he will probably die. And he will die of his own attitudes, which have been allowed to become chronic. Now, he could have learned something from this. A few do. Many do not. Others feel that when they have this kind of a problem come on, the answer is to medicate for it, to take all kinds of sedations and tranquilizers and things of this kind in order to control a disposition that needs to be disciplined from within the individual himself. The only way in which you can get over a dispositional peculiarity is to change yourself. Because if you die with that psychotic situation, you will be where you can't get the pills, but the ailment will linger on. You're not going to get rid of it. So in the end, you have to live with yourself. And nature says, let's make it compatible. Let's live in a way in which you can be comparatively happy, comfortable, and well-adjusted. All this means that we have to gradually take hold of our own lives. We have to do something to break through, not a complacency, but a sense of helplessness, or the simple sense of not recognizing the problems at all, just not knowing they exist, but knowing very clearly the troubles that they cause do exist. Actually, to gain gradually a certain insight can be a very inspiring and wonderful experience. If we suddenly realize that there isn't anyone who hasn't got a job in nature, that everyone here is capable of useful cooperation with the plan of life, and that we all have the right and privilege to grow, and are here for that purpose, we can build our lives more and more around the concept of growth instead of the concept of futility. No individual needs to sit around doing nothing. If he is doing nothing, this is not leisure. This is just simply a strange loneliness in a universe that is made up entirely of life. The person who has no interest in life is dead while yet he lives. But those who have great interest in life, though they die, live forever. It is a matter of bringing out a simple fact that we are creatures of law, that we are fashioned according to a plan, that this plan exists forever as an archetype in the divine mind, that we are the products of a purposeful pattern, and that the deity that fashioned us has appointed us to be the agents of that deity in the perfection of an order of living things. Now, there may be many orders of living things in space, but our order we likely call humanity. And humanity is not merely 4.5 billion people. Humanity is one entity. Humanity is an order of life. And it is part of the plan of things that humanity shall become perfected. That everything that was implanted in humanity as a potential, as a beneficial power given by deity, shall be brought forth to fruition, that it shall bear fruit according to its kind, and that from this gradual cooperation, this gradual mingling of purposes and motives on a constructive level, humanity as an entity, as a simple being, collective, will come into its inheritance, that it will fulfill the purpose for itself. When this occurs, then the entities that are here will have cooperated and will have graduated from this particular grade in the school of creation. Humanity may be in the first year of high school, or it may be the post-kindergarten. But whichever it is, we graduate when we outgrow that particular type of condition. And we outgrow it only by mastering it. We can never outgrow it by voting it out or trying to evade it. No government can take care of people who cannot take care of themselves. They have to gradually be taught to use the resources